Hey, welcome back to the Rock Fantasy Files on the Rock Fantasy YouTube vlog and channel. On this episode, we touch upon Seattle, Washington State's at least, Alice in Chains, who rose to international fame as part of the grunge movement in the early 90s, along with bands like Nirvana, Soundgarden, Pearl Jam, all became household names back then, even though I considered them to be more of a hard rock band with a lot of maybe metal elements in my mind. Alice in Chains stood out of that group, out of those four. I really love Alice in Chains. I do like Soundgarden a lot. I'm not too much into the other two bands personally, but they achieved a success during that era, of course, with the albums Facelift that came out in 1990, Dirt that came out in 1992, of course, the Alice in Chains self-titled album in 95, as well as the Jar of Flies and Sap EP that came out in 94. I guess you can combine them together because I've seen them marketed together, re-released that way. Although never officially disbanding, they were plagued by an extended inactivity from 96 onward, pretty much due to the band's problems with substance abuse in general, which resulted, in Lane Staley's death in 2002. Original bassist Mike Starr also passed away from an overdose on March 8th of 2011. The band regrouped in 2006 with William Duvall taking over as lead vocalist with bassist Mike Inez, who joined in 1993. Original members, of course, Sean Kinney on drums and guitarist Jerry Cantrell. And they've released 3 more albums, with Black Gives Way to Blue in 2009, The Devil Put Dinosaurs Here in 2013, and Rainier Fog in 2018. And tonight I've asked our panel to pick their top 4 releases from the band and give us a little insight on what they like about them, maybe something they don't like. I think we'll go around and we'll split it up tonight because we're doing 4. So maybe we'll start out and give us our number 4 and number 3s, and then we'll wrap around for 2 and 1. That sounds great with everybody. We've got some new people on the show tonight. And my good friend, Mike Mead, a regular customer of mine here in the Middletown area, is on vacation in Quebec and joining us from his vacation room. And he's here tonight. We got Ryan from the Vinyl Destination. We got Myles from Miles of Metal. We got Ove staying up all night in Norway to hang out with us. Andrew Mercer, who's a local musician, artist that plays around a lot in Middletown area and has been on before. And of course, my good friend, Anthony Menella, who also does that, plays out live in venues around town. And let's kick this thing off. Who wants to go first? Since this was Anthony's idea, we're going to let Anthony go first with his number 4 and number 3 albums. And then we'll go around the bend here. Welcome.
Great. Nothing like pressure.
So
I'm starting with my number 4 album.
Yes.
For my number 4 album, I actually picked the 1996 release of the Unplugged album.
Okay.
That, I always think in music in relation to time and where I was, in my life at the time.
Yeah.
96, was one of those years where I thought I had it all figured out. I was 21 years old. But the concept of the MTV Unplugged album, if you will, and not just Alice in Chains, like any Unplugged, always intrigued me because I always loved to hear artists stripped down and, especially if they were, subsequently labeled a, harder artist. I would even have to say, even like LL Cool J was like, wow, okay, this guy's on Unplugged. That's different. I have to hear this. And which, ironically enough, the whole Unplugged thing gave birth to my solo project. Because, I played in a band, we were, hard rock, metal, whatnot. And when the MTV Unplugged culture, MTV used to actually play music videos. I don't know if you guys remember that.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, before all the documentaries.
I don't even know if it's a channel now, but I agree.
Yeah, there was a time where they actually played music because the M stood for music.
Yeah.
it's like a weird thing. But then all of a sudden, like, it was all about I'm 15 years old and I'm having a baby at my junior prom. So I don't know. I really got, I was harnessed by the whole Unplugged thing. I mean, there's plenty of albums that I would probably mention on this panel that you guys would just, kill me with sticks. But Alice in Chains Unplugged was definitely one that just shined for me. The moment I heard it, and then to actually, see the performance, just totally captivated me. And the elements of that album I mean, as hard as it is to see, just Lane was just, I mean, all my years in EMS, it was like somebody check this guy's pulse. I mean, I you couldn't believe like how he got through it. And I mean, there's even scenes where you actually see like Jerry, like, picking up lyrics where, Lane was just kind of like nodding off. But they made it work. And I really thought they brought really, I mean, something really nice to the table with, those songs being stripped down. And it will definitely, like I said, because it was 96, I was 21, had the world in front of me, and that became a staple in the portable CD player in the car, with you click the button for the mega bass.
Yeah.
So that's, definitely had to put that as my, obviously not my number one, but my number four. My number three, I did go with Jar of Flies.
Cool.
I think maybe too, because there was also that element of, it being stripped down, and it was, for, I mean, even though it was an EP, but, for the track listing, for the most part, songs like, Nutshell and, I Stay Away, No Excuses Don't Follow, they weren't that, hard hitting, and they were, maybe they weren't totally stripped down, but, especially something like Nutshell, you just got lost in that, in that, those haunting lyrics, and how Lane, sung. And, that was actually, 94. So that was like the pinnacle of my rock fantasy days, when I was always in the shop.
Yeah.
I was taking classes at Orange County Community College and not passing. It was all about music. It was like my band, school, rock fantasy, my band, school, rock fantasy. And so Jar of Flies fits right into that, because it's, it's January of 94, and, the winters up here, sucked. I'm originally from Long Island, so it was like, why is there all this snow? So, you immerse yourself in your music. And that's why that album will always stand out. So that's my number three, and my number four, no pun intended, in a nutshell.
And the song I Stay Away is just epic.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
I love that song. I can never get tired of hearing that song.
It's got such a, it's almost got such a 60s, almost mamas and papas feel to it. How it rolls up in the intro. And I don't know, I just,
so powerful though too.
Absolutely. Yeah. Just, you I mean, I don't want to sound like, like my parents, but they don't make them like that. They really don't.
not on the radio nowadays.
No, yeah. It's just, it's downloaded in my brain. Like, you put that album on, and like, as soon as you hear, that, especially that track, you just, you go to where you were when you first heard it. And all of a sudden it's like, I look down and I'm like, wow, I'm thinner. And I have more hair. And and I look, what? Okay.
I was thinner in 1996 too, guys. But anyhow, thanks for your input. And we're going to wrap around for your number two and number one. I'm going to move over to someone that's never been on the channel before, and we'll get Mike's point of view on what his number four and number threes are from Alice and Chains.
All right. Well, it's hard to argue anything that's said, and it's real hard to pick four. I could change up at any time. I feel like Pete Pardo when I say that, but
yeah,
on any day of the week, I could interchange some of these depending on my mood, or if you're talking about specific tracks. But I have to go against the grain, and I would put Rainier Fog as my fourth.
Wow.
I think yeah, man, the new albums have a different energy. I really like Jerry. To me, steps up and delivers. The lyrics are mature. We've gotten away from the drugs mostly. It's a grown-up sound, a grown-up subject matter, a real good use of metaphor. If you read the lyrics, and it's quite intelligent. What he's been writing, I really like. He's become my favorite songwriter. And the recordings of that album and the newer three are exceptional.
Yeah.
Guitar tone, all the instruments, atmosphere. The way the vocals sound is so smooth. It is just, to me, some of the best recordings I've heard on any album in any band. It's really good to me. I don't care much for Robert when he takes the lead vocals. Not that I hate it, it's okay. But I really like him either singing with Jerry or as backup to Jerry. And so number 4, All I Am is a really strong song on that one for me. Okay. I like Maybe, which is quite light, but man, it's really good singing. Song structure. Just, I don't know, man. So it ended up on number 4 for me. Just a little bit over some of the acoustic albums for some weaker tracks on those. I just find I'm going back listening to this often.
Yeah.
And then number 3 would be Black Gives Way to Blue, which to me is I mean, this Private Hell is such a good song, man. It is just so good. I burn that album now. I must have listened to it in the hundreds and hundreds of times, right? I wish I had that.
Dude, I had copies of this. Somebody brought this in the store. Wow, several years ago now, and they were all autographed. And I can't imagine, we probably sold them for $20-$30. And I can imagine what this is going for now in Discogs or something.
I really get upset when I hear that people aren't listening to this album or it's not worth listening to. I think that's pure bullshit. Sorry for, but that's the way I feel. It's then you didn't really give it a good listen. I mean, I discovered these ones. I said, man, let me give them a chance. And I lay down on the couch in the living room with full sound, no distraction, and I let them in. I had to do it the hard way a couple times. And once I got it, man, I was like, I know, this is, it's just too good.
Yeah. So
that's how I ended up on 4 and 3. And I listen to the new stuff just as much as I listen to the old stuff. I go back and forth and back and forth. I feel like it's a different mood. The older stuff is like youthful and a little more energy and just a little harder. And the other stuff, if I'm more in the mood, like more the way, that's what I want to hear that day, I'll roll over to the new stuff. And I think it's equally as good, just different.
Yeah.
But familiar.
Yeah. The Black Gives Way to Blue, when that album came out, of course, when you got your first listen, you didn't know what to expect. But to me, it didn't miss a step. I mean, because of Lane and Jerry singing back and forth, maybe I'm wrong. A lot of people disagree with me. To me, it sounded very much like the other stuff, but yeah, the more sophisticated a little bit with the lyrics. But Black Gives Way to Blue, I can remember that when it came out, my wife and I actually took a trip down to the Smoky Mountains. I think we rented a cabin for a week, and I think it was on an iPod at that time. Music changes over the years, but what we had on the trip with us, we absolutely didn't have vinyl. But I remember I bought an iPod dock. We bought somewheres down there. We had a really nice deck, and we didn't stop playing that. That record just played on a rotation that whole vacation down there. And that's how it was a very strong record. So I agree with you. That's going to be in my top 4 somewhere. So,
yeah. And let me just close with one thing. I think it really highlighted how Jerry much how his songwriting, it's a lot, all of Alice in Chains is really his songwriting at the core to me. That's not taking away from Lane. Lane is really the voice and the power, and everybody knows what Lane is. Nobody's going to argue that, but I think Jerry proved himself, who's the songwriter here, and he just is so good. Composition, everything. So.
And what were some of your favorite songs off of Black Is Way to Blue? Did you mention those already?
Yeah, I like Private Hell a lot, and I like the song after it with Elton John. I like Take Her Out a lot. I really like, I don't know why that song is, it's nothing special, but it just grabs me. I like the tone. I like the center section, the use of space. Sometimes he decides not to sing and he just hits that long E in the middle, and the drums and the bass sort of just ride along. It's so many things, man. The way he lengthens out syllables in his singing and uses the space instead of rushing a lot of words all together. I could just go on and on, man. It's ridiculous. And of course the one with the good video the first one to catch me for real on that album was it's like the third track,
Your Decision.
Yeah, Your Decision. When I heard that, that's what pulled me in and let me listen to the rest of it. I heard that, I was like, yo, this is really good.
Yep. Cool. Well, those are Mike's 4 and 3, and we're going to move over to my good friend Andrew Mercer.
Oh, my number 4 is Black Gives Way to Blue, and that's the only one of the newer albums that's on my list. But overall, like, since they came back, like you were saying before, with the guitar tone and just the overall vibe of the band, they seem more of like a metal band now than when Lane was the singer. It might be the production, but it just seems more in your face, especially like Rainier Fog. Like, that was a super heavy album. I didn't like the Dinosaurs album so much, but Black Gives Way to Blue was a great album for me. I remember I saw them live during that cycle. They were with Mastodon and the Deftones. So
I was there.
Yeah,
what a show, man.
Yeah, they were definitely being paired with more metal bands too. But yeah, like you were saying, they were gone for so long, and there's so many bands where they disappear and then they'll put an album out. Like one example is like Guns N' Roses with Chinese Democracy, and like you pray that the new album that the band puts out, like, it doesn't suck. And this one went above and beyond not sucking. Like, it was a great album. Check My Brain's a really good song for me. Looking in View, one that really sticks out is Acid Bubble. Yeah, for me, super heavy, like, weird song. And the title track, Black Gives Way to Blue, it felt kind of like I don't know, kind of like a tribute to Lane. It was kind of a sad song, but like,
for sure,
definitely hits home. Great album overall. For number 3 for me, I'll go with Facelift. Wow. And I will say, I did try to put the Three-Legged Dog album into my top 4, but I can't do it. I listened to it today. It just doesn't hold up. But so Facelift, yeah, the first track off of there, We Die Young, like, crazy good guitar distortion. Another one that really stands out for me is I Can't Remember, Confusion. Just a really great debut album for a band. And more than any of the other, big 4 grunge bands, just the way that they do their vocals, it's different than anybody else, the way that they kind of mix it together, and it's dual vocals. And real quick, those are my 3 and 4.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And now we got another guy that's doing this episode on vacation. Ryan is joining us from somewhere down in Florida.
Yeah.
And he was really wanting to do this because he was like, Alice in Chains. I really want to talk Alice in Chains. So welcome. Let's hear your take on your number 4, number 3 album.
Absolutely. Thanks, Stephen. So yeah, I'm a big fan of Alice in Chains. I've liked them since I was probably like 10 years old. I first heard them I guess it would have been either, I think it probably would have been on VH1 Classic. I heard Man in the Box. And the video like scared the shit out of me when I was a kid. But then, but I was like fascinated at the same time. And I just remember listening to that song over and over again on this Walkman that I had at the time. It was like a CD Walkman player or whatever. And I just played that song over and over again. Just fell in love with all their music. I mean, I think that everything they've ever put out is great. There's nothing that I dislike at all. And so that made this list really, really hard because I'm like, well, do I want to include this? Because there's just so many little caveats. So I decided to only do studio stuff, even though I think Unplugged is an amazing, amazing album. Just because I think that there's just too much good stuff to put it in here. So my number 4 is actually going to be one of the recent albums too, and it's going to be The Devil Put Dinosaurs Here.
Yes.
I really like this album. It's heavy. It's super, super heavy and sludgy. Cool album cover also, but I just think there's so many great tracks on this one. I mean, Stone, that's such a killer song. Great riffing on there, great vocals on it. Lab Monkey, that's a killer track. Paulo's really good. The title track's really good. Everything on this album's awesome. If I had one thing that I did want to nitpick on this record, I think there's too many harmonies on it. Like, it's something that I love on the early albums, the harmonies. But basically, the whole first half of this album is all harmonies, without any just single vocal performances. So I think that's the one thing I nitpick. But I do think that the songwriting is strong and the harmonies still sound fantastic too. And I do like Williams' voice a lot as well. So I think that's one of the reasons why I do say that. I think maybe having a new singer in the band, they wanted to have the harmonies, especially because Jerry has such a great voice too. I mean, him and Lane were interchangeable with each other on those early albums. You know, they blended so well together. And I think Jerry has a lot of great solo vocal performances too. But yeah, this is just a killer record. It's heavy, it's doomy, it's sludgy. I love it. Then my number 3, and if you would have asked me maybe like 10 years ago, this would have been my number 1 on this list, but my number 3 today is going to be Jar of Flies. I love this album so much. It was such a big part of my life that, like, even though I thought about not putting it on here, when I listened to it again and I thought about how many great memories I have with this record, I just had to put it on here. I mean, it's short. It's like a half-hour EP. And it's very stripped down, which I like. I think that Alice in Chains did really well with acoustic stuff. I think that even stronger than a lot of the other bands coming out at this point, they nailed it. I mean, you have Nutshell on here, which is one of the most beautiful songs they ever made. One of the most beautiful songs made by anybody, honestly. For a long time, that was my favorite Alice in Chains track. I mean, you have I Stay Away, which is another epic song. I love the acoustic in it. I love the heavier parts in it. It's just such a cool song. Don't Follow, that's such a beautiful song also. Just great Lane vocals on that one. One of my favorites by them as well. No Excuses. Just throughout this entire album, it's fantastic stuff. And even though it's short, it gives you everything that you need in an album or an EP. You don't feel like it's lacking at all. I think it's perfect. And yeah, it'll be my number 3 today.
Cool. Very good. And now we're going to go to Norway. I don't know if Ovi's awake up there still or not. I don't think he sleeps, but
Yeah, I'll
welcome.
never sleep.
Never sleep.
Thank you,
He's a
thank you.
vampire.
Yes. Well, I didn't know we could pick EPs and live stuff, so
Do whatever you
not gonna
want. It's
change.
anarchy.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not gonna change what I made my list. I'm gonna stick to my list since I didn't know we were doing EPs and live, but I'm gonna stick to my list anyway. So I put number 4. I put Devil Put Dinosaurs here.
Nice.
I haven't really listened to the new albums too much. Shame on me, but since you're doing this, I did do that. So for me, of those 3 albums, Devil Put Dinosaurs here did stick out to me because it had maybe I felt like it had a little magic from the old days in it. I kind of felt the same feelings I got from the first albums, so I recognize that. The songs I really liked best is Breath on a Window. I thought that one was really good, and also the title track is monstrous. But
Yes.
the one I really liked most is Low Ceiling.
Yeah. Great song.
Yeah, and for number 3, I chose the self-titled album. For me, that album is a unique sound. It's like there's no album in the world that sounds like it. It has a I don't know I don't know what the right word is to put it. It's kind of like you're not sick, but like ill. You feel like ill. It's like you're not feeling too well. Kind of vibe to it. It's very down and very. It's something special about it. But for me, the songs I really like best is "Goddamn." I really like that song.
Mhm.
Also, Frogs. I think Frogs is fantastic.
Yep.
And Unplugged version is of course the best one, but and Sludge Factory I feel Sludge Factory is probably the blueprint for what Alice in Chains became after Laney in kind of sound wise and structure wise. Because it's more like sludge, it's more like it's slower, like the newer album will have more like a drone slow
Mhm.
vibe to them. So I feel Sludge Factory is kind of a prequel to what would come. So that's my 3 and 4.
Excellent. Excellent. Thanks. We're going to go down to Louisiana, the Cajun country.
Oh
with
hell
Myles from Myles of Metal. And then
Yeah,
I'm going to
so-
wrap up the first round. with my
So
pick.
Alice in Chains, to me, they're so special to me. I've been in the Alice in Chains since I was a kid. And to me, they're the best band to come out of the Seattle scene, in my personal opinion. And I'm glad that the later albums got picked, just because for me, I like those albums, but the albums that I picked for my 4 are just my personal favorites, and they're the older ones. But out of the newer ones, I would say The Devil Put Dinosaurs here, great album.
Mhm.
And Black Give Way to Blue. You know, I really thought about putting Black Gives Way to Blue on here, but like for me, these 4 releases that they put out have always been special to me for a long, long time. And they were actually really hard to pick. And I would not even put this in like an order. I would tie all of these in my personal opinion. So like I wouldn't even go by where they're ranked at. I'm just going by, what they are. So going for number 4, Jar of Flies, one of the best EPs ever released. I mean, Nutshell, everyone's been talking about it. I Stay Away, No Excuses, Don't Follow. But a song that I never hear gets mentioned off this EP is Rotten Apple, which I love that song off of
Great
here.
one.
It's one of my favorite Alice in Chains songs. Just it's so creepy. Just a great EP, great song. For number 3, it kind of hurts me to put this here, and I really thought about this because this was originally going to be my number 1. But when I really went back and listened to these albums this week, I really put the other 2 ahead of it. But it is the Unplugged album. To me, oh my God, I can't say enough about this freaking Unplugged album, without going on for hours. All the songs on here done acoustically are freaking top notch. When you watch it live, you know, you can tell that Lane's freaking struggling to go through it. But man, does he put in some freaking monster vocals when he's going through it. And, you know, Jerry Cantrell singing on here is, man, I can go on for hours about this, about Mike Inez putting Friends Don't Let Friends Get Friends haircuts all on his bass and stuff. I've listened to this album so many freaking times. I've watched it live so many times, but man, Sludge Factory and Frogs off of here. I would say that the self-titled album is personally for me not one of my favorites, but oh my god, Sludge Factory and Frogs on here are so fucking killer. And I just can't. I'd go on for hours if I kept going. So those are my 3 and 4.
Excellent. All right. So a little bit of the history with me and my world of Alice in Chains. We were back in the day before we even knew who they were. We were approached by Epic Records at my store to host an in-store by a virtually unknown band called Alice in Chains. You know, we're a metal store back then primarily. We didn't have much else but metal. And I'm like, yeah, it's kind of a weird name, but yeah, of course. Anybody wants to do an in-store at my shop, I open arms and still do to this day. You know, it's great to meet the bands. And they were part of the Clash of the Titans tour, which was 1991, which was featured Slayer, Megadeth, and Anthrax at the Orange County Fairgrounds here in Middletown. And we were like, you know, this band, like someone mentioned how they're playing with Mastodon and the Deftones now or whatever, and how they were billed with heavier bands. Well, look at what they were thrown into on their first, you know, major tour in the States. They were thrown in with the heaviest of heaviest. They were thrown on a thrash metal tour. And I remember them not going over well at the fairgrounds. Mike, were you at that show, or Anthony?
I wasn't, and I was at the show, but I didn't go in to see Alice in Chains.
Yeah, you were like, open the band, we're out tailgating or something. But yeah, you know, open up for Slayer is a whole nother animal, you know, like, and being a band that no one knew. And you know, little we know that day, it became probably the most famous in-store appearance that we ever did at the store.
Yeah.
Just, you know, like people bug out and they see some of the old pictures still. It's like, holy shit, Alice in Chains were in the store. I'm like, yeah, they were. How were they? I said, they were cool. I mean, we didn't interact with them that much. We had a line down the street because they were, between us getting the name for them coming to the store, they really popped around that time. They were getting some radio play or whatever else. But they also came back a couple months later and they played a small club here in Middletown on the Facelift tour called The Class. It might have been the Powerhouse, and it sits empty now. It's the Empty Bottle Saloon, which has sit empty for years now. And they came back and wrapped around that. I was wishing that Andrew Freeman, you know, was going to join us in this episode because he has some great stories of being the runner for Alice in Chains that day. And also with the fairgrounds, those guys, him and Steve Massey, who I probably should have invited tonight, have been on the channel. And you can look back when the Orange County Fairgrounds and Middletown scene of them talking a lot about the Alice in Chains visits to Middletown. But, you know, as we look back on those days, as my microphone or my headphones fall out of my ears, look back, that became such a famous in-store and such an epic time. But I'll go with my number 4. My number 4 is also from the newer material. The Devil Put Dinosaurs Here. The songs that I really like, I love Lab Monkey. It's not my favorite song on the album, but I love that. I love that song. I don't know what about it, but I always tease my little dog Daisy here, and I'm like, you don't want me to stick your hide. And it's such a meaningful song too. I mean, I think about torturing animals in the lab. It's kind of maybe a PETA style song, but I just love the lyrics to it. I think that's what he's talking about. Somebody might say it's about something else, but
Most likely.
Hollow, amazing voices, cool video too. just watched a lot of the videos from these from right after dinner tonight. We're getting ready for the show. Stone is also a strong track from it. And somewhere's in my collection, at least I hope it's still in my collection through the pandemic and it didn't disappear in someone else's collection. I have the Devil Put Dinosaurs Here on vinyl. It's a
Nice.
double picture disc. And I am going to my store tomorrow. I've looked through the house. I can't find it. I'm hoping that one of my employees during the pandemic or whatever, or between the moving our business, that did not disappear. I unfortunately
know.
looked up to see how much that record's going for today. And I see it going between $250 to $300.
Wow.
Yeah. It was pricey when it came out. It was like a $60 new list. Of course, you can't get it anymore. I'm hoping it's in one spot at the store still, and I'll go in the morning because I looked in a regular rock section for my personal, and I'm thinking, I think Allison, and it, it's just a sleeve too, so you can't tell by looking on the ends of it what it is. It's just 2 albums in a plastic sleeve. So anyhow, I hope it turns up. But my number 3 is going to be Black Gives Way to Blue. Check My Brain. Your Decision. Acid Bubble are my 3 songs I kind of picked off of that. A lot of people have talked about that album already on this episode, but that came back. I thought Check My Brain was so heavy and so cool. Just dug that. And that's my number 4. My 3, My Little Story About Alice in Chains Here in Town. And we're going back to Anthony to get his number 2 and his number 1 album from Alice in Chains. Welcome back, Anthony.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Taking a look at your Metro weather forecast. Feel like I'm back in radio.
Metro weather. Yeah, we're going to do the weather tonight. It's a big thunderstorm here in Middletown. In fact, Chris Caffrey was
storms
going
rolling on in, and it's going to be rainy with a high of only 68.
We had
Back to you, Steve.
Chris Caffrey was going to join us tonight, but he said the storm is so bad in Goshen, we're next town down from us, that he actually shut his computers off.
Is he like one of those guys who like doesn't talk on like a cordless phone during a storm or doesn't take a shower?
Maybe, but he said he texted me just a little bit ago. He was going to do. We did a Leonard Skinner episode before this. He said, "I'm just not going to put the computer on."
My grandmother.
He had a great story about Mike Starr. Oh yeah, but well, maybe another episode. Go ahead, Anthony. Sorry, I'm talking over you.
No, dude. So from my number 2, I picked Facelift. And I'm leading into my number 1, which is from looking at me, it's going to be a dead obvious, but I think when it came to first hearing Facelift or first seeing Man in the Box, I was 15 when that came out, and once again I always put music in relation to where I was in my life. I know I'm a broken record, but hey, that's why you had me on the show.
That's what you do.
So when I first heard Man in the Box, and when I first heard the song, saw the video, that was like the thing, that we started talking about in high school. Cause I kind of hung around with, the geeky end of the metalheads. But the one thing I'll always say about Facelift is, from a fan perspective, a teenage fan perspective, Alice in Chains at that point was genreless. Nobody knew what to make of them. Nobody knew what to call them. And I remember, but it's like, what are they? Are they metal? And I mean, Nirvana actually fell into that too. It's like, well, what are they? What are they? And I remember like somebody saying, well, they're sludge rock. They're what? What, it was like the first time I ever heard the term groove metal. I thought Pantera was metal, and it was like, no, they're groove metal.
Yeah,
well, that makes sense. But I always remembered it was, Alice in Chains was one of those bands that fell into one of those categories where the days before the internet, you scratched your head and you were like, well, where would you put these guys? I mean, not like completely eclectic like Primus, but you were like, oh yeah, they're doing something dirty and raw, and that's the best way for me to describe Facelift was dirty and raw, like We Die Young, Man in the Box, Sea of Sorrow, Bleed the Freak. The one track that always sticks out for me on that album was It Ain't Like That. And
That's a good one.
I think reason being was I liked the song on the album. I loved it. And I love that just filthy, dirty bottom end, that down picking. And I was like, yeah, I like that. Whatever he's doing, I want to do that on my guitar. And then I remember, nor here nor there, but it is here because, they were featured in the film. I remember in 1992, there was that movie called Singles about these love, stories going on during the Seattle music scene in Seattle. And Chris Cornell had a cameo in it, and, Buzzo from the Melvins and whatnot. And Kara Sedgwick, Kevin Bacon's wife, is in the movie as one of the characters, and her girlfriend go and see Alice in Chains at this warehouse, filthy club underground.
There it is.
And they perform that. And it's obviously not the track from the album. It's obvious this was when Cameron Crowe did this movie, this was he shot them doing this. And I don't care if it's a romantic movie. I don't give a flying rat's ass in hell. Watch that movie and watch Alice in Chains' performance of It Ain't Like That. And it's just mind blowing. It's just unbelievable. I will literally put that movie on just for that scene and then go do laundry. But that's why I put that at my number 2. Mainly because of, track listing. And again, where I was, that was kind of a bit of a, turning point where I was still living on Long Island, in Queens, and I wasn't up here yet. So coming into number 1, for my number 1, I picked Dirt. I know it's kind of obvious, especially for me, because, I like the commercial successes, Carcass. But Dirt for me, it came out in 92, but for me, it maintained. Dirt maintained into the next year when I graduated high school, because, I graduated high school in 1993. So Dirt was, we all have those albums. We all have those albums that we remember senior year of high school, what you immersed yourself in, when you were a senior. And Dirt was it. It was, it was in my car. I was carpooling in the morning with like Eddie Romeo and, Jeff Herring and them. And that was, that was like a staple album amongst like Ministry, The Way to Succeed and The Way to Suck Eggs and stuff like that. But obviously, from Them Bones to, Down in a Hole where you just, went somewhere else. And then, who's not going to mention Wood? I am, regardless, being about Andrew Wood, but, you could take those lyrics, and that was the one thing about Alice in Chains lyrics for me was, the way they were constructed, regardless of what this song means to them, I could take it and put it in my life and say, well, I could see where you're going with this. Like, for instance, Choke. I understand Choke is about, a significant other that Jerry would like to choke. I look at that as an estranged relationship with, one of my siblings. And, if I play that song, acoustically, that's where I go. So I kind of, customize the lyrics to my trials and tribulations. So, when I heard a song like Wood, and just the intro alone, just, when it first started, when you heard that haunting bass intro, you stopped what you were doing and you were like, these guys are onto something. And then right up there with, Sick Man. I love the intro I love the drums in Sick Man. Just that, and I can't know why I'm doing that in my living room and I'm air drumming. But, it takes you somewhere. And then, of course, Rooster. And, regardless of them being commercial successes, but, fuck it. They're commercial successes for a reason, because they're good. And that's why that album will always be my number 1 Alice in Chains album, because like I said, it hooked me in 92, and then maintained with me, you know, senior year into high school, you know, when you all start changing, and then into freshman year at college. So, and to me, it still holds weight to this day. That's what I always call like the beginning to end albums. You know, like you don't just put on one track a Master of Puppets. You start at Battery and you just let it play. Dirt, for me, that's the beginning to end album. And that's all I have to say about that.
Excellent. And of course, you know, that's what's special about music, because when you hear a song from whatever decade, it puts you back. At least it does with me. I don't know who it would.
Of course. I
put
mean,
you back.
you know, most of the things I listen to, not to kiss your ass, they always put me back in rock fantasy.
Well, yeah, when we're talking 90s, right?
You know, sitting there in the 90s, you know, denim jacket, you know, ponytail, even though it
Playing
was
bubble
a mullet,
hockey.
bubble hockey, having people threatening to kick my ass over Carcass artwork.
Oh, well, we'll have to move along with that. It was only one day of many good times. But Anthony, I always love to have you on the channel. And Anthony's also, we have to give it up to Anthony. He's a first responder. He's works in the ER here at the local medical center, the hospital, and keeps me abroad and through this whole pandemic of what's going on. And, you know,
And I
he's
just
lost
beat
a couple
COVID.
people. So. He was a COVID frontline worker in the very beginning of this thing.
From the very beginning, and I just got it back on Mother's Day, and I beat it.
Good for you. And it seems like everybody and their brother's getting it again now. It's coming around, but
yeah,
that's why we're here talking about music, so we don't have to hear about viruses and politics tonight. So we try to keep it to that. But Anthony is a trooper and still gives me some reports like, Anthony, what's going on over the hospital today?
You don't want to know.
I check in on him. Well, he'll tell me if the rates are up and down without having to turn on the major news networks, at least. So anyhow, we're going to pop back over to Mike and try to get this episode going a little bit. It's been a great episode so far. There's plenty to talk about with this band. So Mike, welcome back.
Thanks. Absolutely. Man, you guys are springing up so much stuff. This could go on and on all night. And I like I like Choke off of that album too. That is a really good song.
Yeah.
And as far as Alice in Chains goes, I hated Alice in Chains. I hated late hair metal. I wanted my hard Slayer and everything below. So all through the 90s, it was the beginning of the 90s. I just railed against grunge and everything. And I did myself a disservice because I didn't go to Alice in Chains at the class. I sat on the steps up to the band room and listened from the steps and went home and had this terrible attitude about it. and I regret this to that day so much. Not long after that, I was cruising home and I get into my driveway and WPDH 11 o'clock at night plays Wood on the radio. And I had never heard it before. So I'm just listening and I go, "Ooh, this sounds pretty good." And I crank it up. And by the end of it, that had twisted something in me. Right. And I lost it after that. It just hit me so hard. And I went right out the next day and I got Dirt. And I remember going home and I had a boombox and I disconnected the speakers and I put it over my head and I just listened over and from front to back over and over and over. Down in a Hole really got me. That really thought that band stretched with that song. Yeah. And so, you know, the next two are like a tie for me. So Facelift and Dirt are kind of like a tie for different reasons, but I'll go for my second as Facelift. The first time I heard Alice in Chains, it was We Die Young, but I thought it was a Trouble song. Remember that band Trouble?
Yeah.
I remember Trouble.
And, you know, of course, over time, after I had heard the Wood song and I went backwards and got the first album, I was like, oh, man, I really like this now. And I really like how Lane's voice sometimes mimics Jerry's dirty guitar sound on that album. They sound really close at times. We Die Young, Sea of Sorrow is just so good. And I really like Sunshine. Sunshine, man, I swear to God, I stand in the middle of my living room and I could just sing that you know, when the voices rise so strong,
Yeah.
the way that breaks down in the middle is such a unique song. There's nothing that sounds like that. Yes, so that album, it's bluesy. It's a little more fun. It's not quite as slow and drugged out. I kind of feel like it's a little more fun and youthful, that album. So, but I think a lot of the songs start off similar. At occasions, they could have had like better openings for a few times. I feel like they weren't really there 100% yet. So that's why I put Dirt as number one. There's, you know, that whole album. I mean, what can you say about that hasn't been said already? That album,
Yeah.
every song is a banger, so unique. Sick Man is so weird. The way he sings, Rooster, it just goes.
Yeah.
It's just such a unique album. It's quality. It's yeah, I mean, I don't even know what you can say about it past what everybody's already said, but
True.
Iconic.
Even though I've listened to it so many times and burned out so many songs, I still have to keep it as number one because it just I mean, if you go back to the first time you heard that album, it just, I don't know about anybody else here, but it had that blown you away.
Definitely.
I mean, it stands up to any album out there in any genre, in any band. I don't care who it is, to me. So, and you know, a lot of people give Nirvana credit as being the best band of that group, or I don't know. Alice in Chains, to me, I think is the number one.
Yeah.
Hands down. Not to take away from Soundgarden or any of that. I mean, you know, they all have their thing, but Alice in Chains, to me, I think is the most quality. So there's my 1 and 2.
Cool. And now we're moving back over to Andrew Mercer. Thanks, and you've been great tonight. I'll have to have you back for other subjects, Mike. I think you're really good on the show. Thanks, Andrew.
So my number 2 is Jar of Flies. Like my musical interest is, I'm big into acoustic stuff like Anthony. For me, I think it's interesting when you take something that in the studio they use, you know, 11, 12 different tracks, and you just strip it down to a guitar and a voice. Now it's not quite an acoustic album, that album, but you could tell they wanted it to be softer for sure. But the musical sophistication of all the guys combined, like it couldn't just be acoustic. So I mean, all the instruments are really great in that album. And if Nutshell was the only track on that album, that would still be number 2 for me. That is a tremendous song. I mean, it's super emotional, and you know, like Lane died and stuff, and it's just it really hits certain parts, you know.
Yeah.
But and the recording too, like the acoustic guitar and all those tracks, it's really bright, and it's just really well done. And like Myles was saying, Rotten Apple is such a great song. The bass starting at, like, it sounds really good, and it's dark. And again, the different harmonies between Lane and Jerry is just awesome. EP or album, whatever you want to call it. And for me, number 1 also, it's Dirt. It's iconic. My favorite song off that album is Junkhead. And they really kind of, you know, I wasn't really around back then, so I don't know. But if it wasn't known that they were heavy drug users before, like with that album, the genie was kind of out of the bottle, like right to it. And then you got Damn That River is one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Rain When I Die, I love that song. I mean, Rooster, like Anthony was saying, like they're hits for a reason, right? Like,
Yep.
Yeah,
of course,
man.
that's on the radio all the time, but that's an awesome song. Like Wood, it's not a bad track on there. Honestly, it's iconic. And you know, like I'm a big Nirvana fan. Like I'm not gonna put them down, but I think, you know, Nevermind and Dirt, they're, if you want to say one's a little better than the other, that's fine. But they could go against each other, and it's just a matter of preference, in my opinion. So that's 1 and 2 for me.
Excellent. Thank you for your time tonight, Andrew.
Thanks for having me.
And before we go tonight, I want to talk to you about something you're doing in Middletown at Davidge Park.
Yeah.
Sounds interesting. I'll tell you a little story about that when we go up there.
All right.
I tried doing a festival there a long time ago.
Uh-oh.
Ryan's back from Vinyl Destination. Everybody wants to hear about Alice in Chains. We'll talk when we get up there.
Yeah, so my top two is where it got really hard for me, and I had to not include Facelift in this list, which really hurt me because I love that album so much. But I just had to go with what I'm feeling with them. And so my number two is going to be Dirt. It wasn't the first album that I got into with them, but it blew my mind when I heard it as well. And it still blows my mind every time I hear it. I mean, it's heavy. It has a lot of great hits on it. It's super weird too, and it is sludgy. I mean, it was a revolutionary album for the time. I mean, I love a lot of the bands that came out of the 90s as well. I'm a huge Nirvana fan too, and Soundgarden, all those guys. But Alice in Chains really has always been probably my first or second favorite of those groups, just because like albums like this are just mind-blowing. I mean, you have Them Bones on Damn That River. Rain When I Die, that's a killer track. That's a super heavy song, and I love that. That's one of my favorites on here. Down in a Hole is an amazing hit. I mean, even though I've heard it so many times, it never gets tiring for me. Sick Man, the super weird stuff. I love that song. Junkhead's that's one of my favorites too, honestly, Andrew. It's probably top three for me on here. Rooster, killer stuff. I love that song. Angry Chairs, great. Wood, Hate to Feel. Everything on this album is just perfect. I think that the reason it's not my number one spot is just because compared to the album that is going to be my number one, it isn't quite as raw sounding. I think some of the drums do have a little bit of a dated sound to them, whereas the next album, I like the production on a little bit more. But when it comes to songwriting and performances and everything, it's just a perfect album, and it had to be my number two. I mean, it's legendary for a reason. I think it's a very personal album for the band and the lyrics, and you could feel the pain and everything that they were going through as they made it. It's just an amazing album, and it's one for the history books. My number one is going to be a kind of weird pick, but so my dad, when he was alive, he had this this book of CDs, and he didn't save any of the cases and stuff, which nowadays just gives me OCD so bad that the cases weren't still there. But like I would go through, he had all the booklets and stuff with the CDs. I'm going through it. At this point, I knew Man in the Box and some of the other hits by the band. I see in there all of his Alice in Chains CDs, and I see this album cover, and I'm like, what the hell? And so I put it on, and at the time, I didn't know what to think of the self-titled album. It's so weird and drugged out and psychedelic and dirty sounding. It's not quite as metallic as the first two records with the guitar tones and stuff. They do use a little bit more acoustic in some parts of it and some cleaner tones, but it's still so sludgy and heavy and dirty. And it just, for me, is my favorite Alice in Chains album, just because it makes me feel claustrophobic as I'm listening to it. It's just like one of those albums. It's kind of like your Draw the Line by Aerosmith. Like they were the rawest they ever sounded to this point, the most drugged out they ever sounded. And I love it. And, there's so many killer tracks on this album. Grind, fantastic opening track. I love the riff on there. I love Lane's vocals. It's just killer stuff. Sludge Factory, one of my favorite Alice in Chains tracks. I do think the unplugged version's amazing, maybe even a little bit better, but I still love this version as well. It's so heavy and definitely a testament of what was going to come in the future. Heaven Beside You is a great acoustic track. I think that's them showing again that like unplugged stuff really works for the band. Head Creeps is probably one of my favorites, if not my favorite song on this album. It is so messed up and just like so dirty sounding and psychedelic in its own weird way. It's just crazy stuff. Again, I love Shame on You. God Am is amazing. So Close. Frogs is another one of my favorites. It's a super weird track, really claustrophobic feeling. And, you know, Over Now is a great ending track. I think that even though I can't deny that Dirt may be their best album, because it probably is. And maybe Facelift is better as well. This one's always the one that's really resonated for me. Even though I was at a loss when I first heard it, it was still one that I was like, I'm gonna keep going back to that album. Even though I was stupid young at the time. I was maybe 12 when I heard that album. And it was a lot for a 12-year-old to listen to. But you know, as I get older and older, I love that album so much. And it is my favorite Alice in Chains record.
Didn't it come with
Thank you.
yellow casing or a purple casing too? Like purple plastic or yellow plastic? The original CD?
Mine was yellow, I remember.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not sure. Like I said, the jewel case wasn't there, but
And yeah, well, that went on a lot from a guy that owns a record store. You'd get so many people back in the day would say, hey, you buy CDs? Ah, sure we do. And then they'd show up. We all had those booklets, Ryan, and you, in order to keep that booklet in your car, there was no way of keeping the case. And sometimes you'd keep the sleeve because you'd put the sleeve in the slot, you know, with the CD itself. But a lot of times you just get a big old book full of CDs and you tell the person, no, we don't buy them like that. Oh, come on, man.
I had the visor. I had the one on the sun visor.
Yeah, you had the one on
would
the
hold 10
visor,
of
the
them.
small one, but then you had the book and you'd hide the book in the back seat of the car and put it under a blanket or something, because you'd have like hundreds of dollars worth of CDs in the back seat of your car.
yeah.
But anyhow, that's a whole nother topic for another subject, another episode. Thanks, Ryan. That was really good. And we'll head up Ove and Myles to get my final thoughts, and we'll move on from the Alice in Chains episode, which has been a blast.
Definitely.
Yeah. For my number 2, I picked Dirt. I really like the music videos. I think it's a really cool album. I think maybe the lyric theme is kind of one-dimensional for me, but it's the situation they were in. But my favorite songs is Hate to Feel. I really like Hate to Feel. It's so good. And Dirt, of course. But the pinnacle of this album is Rain When I Die.
Yeah.
Lane's performance on Rain When I Die is, how does he do it? Is he alien or is he, where is he from? My number 1 is Facelift, and Facelift wasn't my number 1 always, but over the years I've come to enjoy it more and more because I feel it's the album that's most diverse. It has the most different songs in it. It's all like from glam to like metal to like country to everything mashed into one album. I find it very interesting to listen to because you got a little bit of this and a little bit of that in it. And for songs, number 3, I took Bleed the Freak. I just love the opening guitar on Bleed the Freak. Number 2, Sunshine, because Laney sings so good and the guitar solo is so amazing in Sunshine. But for my favorite song of Alice in Chains ever is I Can't Remember.
Wow.
It got heavy parts, it got that more silent part, and you got Laney going up in those high notes. That's so high that's not impossible. And he belts out the most amazing lyrics. I just love that song. So Facelift number 1 for me.
That's awesome. Thanks,
Back to
Ove.
the start.
Yeah. And great descriptions of some of those songs. I love doing these episodes and you get hearing about these songs and yes, it just flows in your head and you're like, yeah, how great some of these tracks are. And you
Yeah.
just want to go on, you just want to stop listening to everybody talk and go put it on, right? All right, Miles, me and you are gonna close this one out.
Yeah, so before I get into my top 2, since all Alice in Chains' releases are pretty good, I mean, well, not pretty good, they're fucking awesome. But
Yep.
I got Sap right here. I
Mm.
got the self-titled with the purple case right there. I got
Nice.
the newest album, Rainier Fog, which is a very good album. 2 other albums that I have right here is the Mad Season Above album. It's a pretty good album. I don't like
Love
it as
it.
much as Alice in Chains, but it's pretty good. And then I got the single soundtrack, and
Yeah.
you know, the thing is singles. I don't like the movie, but the only part that's ever good in that movie is when Alice in Chains is playing It Ain't Like That. That's the best
Thank
part
you.
that's the best
Thank
part of the
you.
movie. It's
Thank
fucking
you.
awesome. And also just while I got talking about this, one of the bands that I really love from Seattle that doesn't get mentioned enough in my personal opinion is Mother Love Bone with
Yeah.
Andrew Wood.
Thought you were gonna say something else.
Yeah, because Mother Love Bone is a fucking amazing band, man.
Yeah.
If Andrew Wood wouldn't have passed away because of substance issues, they would have been up there with the tops, And what made me think about it is they do have a song on here. So my top 2, number 2, Facelift. It's a genreless album. I can't pick 3 songs that I would love off this record because all of them are fucking amazing. We Die Young, Man in the Box, Sea of Sorrow, Bleed the Freak. One song that I freaking love off this record that I don't think nobody mentioned it was Real Thing, which is the last song on here.
That's a good one.
Love that song. And my favorite song on here is It Ain't Like That. This is a freaking 10 out of 10 album for me also. But number 1, cliche as it might be, but there's a fucking reason why it's cliche, is Dirt. This is one of the best albums ever put out, in my personal opinion. Every song on here, you can't skip none of these songs, but just Them Bones, Damn That River, and Rain When I Die. Just those first 3 songs put this album in another level for me. Angry Chair, one of the only songs that Lane Staley actually wrote. Fucking amazing song.
Plays guitar.
Dirt, the title track. Wood, I mean, everybody's said it. Down in a Hole, one of Lane Staley's best vocal performances ever. Rooster, Sick Man, Junkhead. You can go on, and I can go on and on about this album as well. I don't give a damn how cliche it is, how commercial it is. It's always going to be my number 1 favorite Alice in Chains album, and it's actually one of my favorite albums of all time. So Dirt is definitely number 1.
Cool.
Is that Laney's girlfriend that's the model on the front cover? Was she the model I used for inspiration for their...
I was gonna say, what was the? I knew the story behind that.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Hang on. Talk amongst yourselves.
Google.
I don't know who it is, but it's fucking awesome. I love the album cover on
Because
it.
it looks like his girlfriend that died in 96 or something.
Thinking of Alice in Chains in my store over the years, I can remember, I don't know where it ended up, as a promo from the record company, we actually had the jar of flies. It was a mason jar.
Oh,
or
nice.
I
just
remember that.
Something like it. You remember that, Anthony? It
I
used to be
remember
in my
that.
shop, and it had like the
Yeah.
plastic
Is-
flies.
Yeah, there's
stuck
actually a
all in it.
version of this CD that has plastic flies in it right here. And when I found this one, I thought it had the plastic flies, and I got so excited, and then I saw it was just the printed flies, and I got kind of disappointed.
But we actually had an actual jar that the record company sent us to sit around the store. And I don't know whatever happened to it. I'm sure that's probably worth a couple bucks too nowadays. We also got a banner sent to us, like a banner for Dirt to hang up. It was actually like a vinyl banner back in the day. I remember having that.
Nice.
Where it is now, I don't have them anymore, but anyhow, so I guess it's my turn. And yeah, these two albums, I mean, how do you really pick one over the other? We all have been, but I guess tonight, just because of the connection with the store, I'm gonna go number 2 with Dirt. And I'm gonna go Down in the Hole for my number 1. I love the song Wood. I'm surprised. I don't think anybody's talked about with Them Bones. I mean, it's one of the biggest
No.
hits. I don't think anybody's really mentioned Them Bones too much on the episode tonight. Maybe because it's one of the more played songs, but I love Them Bones.
Said the first 3 songs off this record put this in the upper echelon. Them Bones,
Yeah.
Damn That River,
Angry
Rain
shit.
When I Die.
Yeah,
Freaking-
strong. I might have to switch it to number 1, but right now it's my number 2. And I'm going with Facelift for number 1. And of course, I talked about the connection with the store, having them do the signing in the shop for that. And Man in the Box. Some people probably are played out because they've heard it a million times on the radio or wherever, but I still dig it. Bleed the Freak, We Die Young. Another great song off it. Let me pick it up and just pick at least one more. Love, Hate, Love. I don't think people have mentioned
Oh,
that. The whole
nice
album
one.
is great though, you know. Like,
Lower
so-
Hit Love is fantastic.
yeah. So Sea of Sorrow, we mentioned it all. And what a great episode. I hope our viewers out there in TV land are enjoying it with us too. And please, our viewers, please mention your favorite albums from Alice in Chains in the comments and moments, times you saw them in concert, maybe. And the Alice in Chains are on tour this summer. They're coming around the United States. I don't know about Europe, but I know North American tour. They're out on the road with Breaking Benjamin and Bush. So they go from playing with, like, we talked about the diversity of this band. They go out with playing with like Mastodon and heavier tours, and then coming out with more of a mellow tour. You know, more, I don't know, Breaking Benjamin is a form of metal, but it's more of a commercial tour than sometimes you see them out with. But that is the tour for this summer with Alice in Chains. So please take a moment to subscribe to the channel if you like what we're doing. We'll be back next week with a couple more episodes, and we do trying to keep this thing weekly through the warm months of 2022 and talk about music, and instead of all the crazy, awful things going on in the world, we're trying to keep it positive on the Rock Fantasy Vlog. So thanks for first timer Mike for joining us, man. It was great having you on and touching base, and Anthony for coming up with the idea. Sorry we didn't have any rock stars, just us rock fans tonight. Andrew, Ryan, Ovi, and Miles. We'll see you next time on the Rock Fantasy Vlog.